Love can feel strangely uncomfortable when you spent childhood surviving without enough of it. You want closeness, then tense up the moment it arrives. Someone cares about you, and your first instinct is suspicion. Not because you're cold, but because warmth once came with confusion. You may have spent years saying you're just independent, but some forms of independence are really old loneliness wearing clean clothes. You answer your own problems before anyone can help. You smile, say, "I'm good," and feel almost irritated when someone notices otherwise. It's not that you don't want love. It's that receiving it touches the exact place where you once learned not to need too much. And that lesson can hide everywhere. In your voice, your posture, your relationships, even the way you say thank you too quickly. People often think love is hard to receive because of low self-esteem. Sometimes it's deeper than that and much quieter. Sometimes the real issue is that love feels unfamiliar in the body, and unfamiliar things rarely feel safe, even when they're good. Emotionally neglected children usually don't grow up thinking, "I was neglected." They grow up thinking, "I'm too much, too sensitive, too needy, or somehow harder to love." That's what makes this wound so hard to spot. It often leaves no dramatic story, just a lifelong habit of asking less. Maybe nobody screamed at you. Maybe nobody hit you, abandoned you, or made the pain obvious. Maybe your emotions simply had nowhere to land. They entered the room and nobody really reached for them. You were sad and the moment passed. You were scared and life kept moving. You were hurt and somehow the family mood mattered more than your inner world. So you adjusted because children always do. You learned that being easy was rewarded. Being quiet made things smoother and having needs made the room heavier. So you became low maintenance. That label sounds mature, but many children earn it by disappearing in plain sight. As an adult, this can look oddly admirable from the outside. You're reliable, thoughtful, calm under pressure, and rarely demanding. People trust you because you seem steady. What they may not see is how much of that steadiness was built by self-erasure. You can sit with your own pain for years without naming it. You can comfort everyone else while feeling almost embarrassed by your own hunger. When love comes close, it doesn't just offer comfort, it exposes the fact that comfort was missing. That's why care can feel emotional but also unsettling. It shines light on an old absence you had to normalize. A partner says, "You don't have to do everything alone," and something inside you softens, then immediately braces. Part of you wants to melt into that sentence. Another part hears danger, debt, disappointment, or the risk of needing more. Because emotional neglect teaches a child something profound. It teaches them that needing connection is often lonelier than pretending not to. So the child adapts by becoming early. Early with responsibility, early with self-control, early with reading the room. They become the one who doesn't add pressure. They become the one who can wait, swallow, and understand. That child often turns into an adult who seems wise beyond their years. But being forced inward too early is not the same as being safe. A lot of emotionally neglected people were praised for maturity. They handled disappointment quietly, acted helpful, and did make a scene. Adults called them strong. When nobody asked was why strength had become the only acceptable shape of their pain. This creates a very specific problem in love. You don't just fear rejection. You fear dependence, exposure, and the shame of visible need. You may be perfectly able to give. Giving feels organized, useful, and familiar. Receiving is different. Receiving means staying still long enough to feel what rises when someone is gentle with you. And what rises is not always gratitude first. Sometimes it's grief, confusion, guilt, or the urge to make yourself smaller. You might downplay compliments before they fully land. You might joke the moment tenderness gets too real. You might return every favor immediately because being cared for too long makes you feel off balance. Like now you owe something just for existing. That feeling did not come from nowhere. Children who were emotionally unsupported often became experts in not costing too much. If love required too much space, they learned to ask for less space. If their feelings disrupted the environment, they learned to edit them fast. Eventually, self-editing becomes automatic. You stop noticing how quickly you translate your real feelings into something easier for others to handle. That is why some people freeze when asked a simple question. "How are you really?" can feel harder than explaining an entire work project. Not because they have nothing inside, because their inner world was never practiced out loud. Feelings that weren't welcomed often stay undifferentiated. You sense pressure, heaviness, or a strange ache. but not the clean language for it. So when love invites honesty, you can feel behind your own experience. Like the emotion is there, but you only reach it after the moment is over. This delay confuses a lot of people. They think, if I cared, I would know what I feel right away. But emotional neglect often creates a gap between experience and awareness. The body reacts first, and the understanding arrives much later. That gap affects relationships in subtle ways. Someone asks what you need, and your mind goes blank. Not because you're simple, because no one built that bridge with you when you were young. Maybe you were the child who handled your own homework, your own feelings, your own disappointments. Maybe adults leaned on your maturity because it made their lives easier. Maybe you became the helper in the house, the one who noticed tension before anyone named it. Maybe you learned to read footsteps, sighs, slammed cabinets, or long silences, not for drama, but for survival. Children in emotionally thin homes become weather readers. They track atmosphere better than they track themselves. That skill follows them into adulthood. They notice everyone's mood in a room, but struggle to identify their own limits. They can sense when a partner is pulling away, yet they may miss the moment they themselves started shutting down. They're often deeply empathetic, but that empathy can become one-sided because it was built around vigilance, not mutuality. So when a loving person says, "Let me take care of you," the nervous system doesn't instantly register relief. It often registers uncertainty. Care can feel like being watched too closely. Kindness can feel like a spotlight. Attention can stir the old fear that now you have to perform wellness, gratitude, or emotional neatness. Otherwise, the care might disappear. This is why some emotionally neglected people pull away after intimacy. Not because the moment meant nothing, but because it meant too much. After being seen, they often need distance to reorganize. Closeness touched something tender that was never safely held before. The outside world may call this mixed signals. Inside, it feels more like emotional whiplash. You want to be chosen, but being chosen brings pressure. You want softness, but softness makes your defenses suddenly visible. Sometimes love feels safer when it's unavailable. A distant person lets you long without fully receiving. That kind of longing hurts, but it also protects you. You never have to face the deeper fear of being cared for consistently. Consistent love is hard for neglected people in a very specific way. It asks them to stop surviving around connection and actually live inside it. And living inside it can feel disorienting. There are no old scripts for being gently met over and over. So you might test people without meaning to. You might minimize your hurt, then secretly watch whether they notice. You might say it's fine while hoping someone hears the pain underneath. When they don't, the old ache returns with fresh evidence. Or you might do the opposite. You might reveal nothing at all, then feel lonely when nobody reaches the part you never showed. This is one of the cruelest outcomes of emotional neglect. It teaches you to hide your needs, then punishes you with the emptiness that follows. At work, this can look like being everyone's emergency contact. You're the one who stays late, fixes the mess, and doesn't complain. Praise may come easily there, but rest still feels undeserved, and help still feels slightly humiliating. In friendships, you may be the steady one people confide in. You remember birthdays, answer late-night calls, and know exactly how to support them. Then you go home and sit with a strange silence, not because nobody cares, but because you rarely let care reach you fully. In relationships, you may apologize for tiny things, for being tired, for needing reassurance, for asking a second question. You can feel guilty just for having emotional weather, as if your humanity is an inconvenience someone is generously tolerating. You may also confuse love with being easy to love. You try to be reasonable, agreeable, undemanding, and endlessly understanding. But love that only reaches the edited version of you will always feel partial, even when it looks stable from the outside. That's why some people feel lonely inside decent relationships. They are loved, but not in the place where they still hide. And hiding can become so normal that it feels like personality. I'm private can sometimes mean I never learned it was safe to be known. I'm just bad at receiving can really mean receiving touches shame I've been carrying since childhood. That is not weakness. It is history. There's also grief in this pattern that many people overlook. Being loved now can awaken sadness for all the versions of you who went without. The child who was scared and stayed composed. The teenager who looked mature because nobody had time for their confusion. The young adult who became hyper-competent before they ever felt held. love touches all of them at once. So sometimes receiving love brings tears you can't explain, not because something is wrong, but because something old has finally been reached. Still, insight alone does not erase the reflex. Your body may still tense when someone offers too much kindness too quickly. You may still want to joke, deflect, help back, or change the subject. That doesn't mean you're incapable of intimacy. It means your system learned to associate safety with self-containment, and unlearning that takes more honesty than performance. The real shift begins when you stop calling this strength, not because you are weak, but because survival deserves a more truthful name. There is strength in enduring, but there is also loss in becoming someone who can endure everything except being gently cared for. A lot of people were admired for how little they ask for, but there is nothing inherently healthy about needing almost nothing. Sometimes that is not peace, sometimes that is a child who learned to live on emotional crumbs. Real maturity is not never needing reassurance. It is being able to need without collapsing into shame. It is being able to say, "That hurt me," without feeling childish. It is being able to rest without earning your right to exist first. It is being able to let someone show up twice, then 3 times, then 10, without assuming the bill will come later. That may sound simple to other people. To someone shaped by emotional neglect, it can feel like learning a new language in adulthood. The first word in that language is often permission. Permission to notice when care makes you tense instead of pretending it doesn't. Permission to admit that love can feel both beautiful and threatening. Permission to stop shaming yourself for that contradiction. Because contradiction is often the most honest thing in the room. You can crave closeness and still flinch from it. You can love deeply and still struggle to trust love aimed at you. Both can be true at the same time. And when you understand that, something changes. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What taught me this?" That question has more compassion in it. It makes room for cause, for context, for the child who had to become careful. It also reveals the hidden cost of being strong too early. You learn how to function without comfort, but not how to receive it. You learn how to stay useful in hard rooms. You did not learn how to stay open in gentle ones. That is why love can feel strange in your hands. Not because you were made for distance, but because closeness once lacked a map. The goal is not to become effortlessly soft overnight. The goal is to stop mistaking your old protection for your true personality. You are not only the dependable one, you are also the one who deserved to be emotionally met before becoming so capable. And maybe that is the deepest ache here. So much of your likability was built around how little you needed. But the part of you that needed more was never wrong. It was just early, quiet, and left alone too often. If love still feels hard to receive, that does not mean your heart is closed. It may mean your heart learned to survive without enough witness. So when tenderness feels uncomfortable, don't rush to call yourself broken. Some people aren't resisting love. They're meeting for the first time the grief of how long they lived without it, and that is a very different story.